If you've been watching cricket around the Americas region over the last couple of years, you've definitely heard the voice of Nikhil Chandani. Lucky for me and lucky for those viewing today, we've got Nikhil with us. And Nikhil, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Nate. Always a pleasure and so fantastic to be speaking about cricket, during this minor league. What's been an exciting minor league season, man.
Yeah, I know. I feel lucky to be involved in this. It's such a great product right now, especially with the new premium streams, which you've been a big part of the last couple of weeks. Can you tell me how that's going?
Yeah, definitely. I think the premium stream for me has been, breathtaking and a real fantastic opportunity for me to be involved in. I just think the way that you have sort of exposure, not only for the big names like Onmuk Chan or, a Sami Aslam, but then the under 19 talent, some of the youngest players around. I just think for them to be exposed to that type of coverage with 8 cameras, replays, a chance for them to go and see, but also for people around the world to get to enjoy cricket and the game at that type of level, I think it's been truly a revelation. And just for me to be involved in it has been such a huge opportunity, man.
Yeah, these are long days for you. The long days here in Morrisville. For those who don't know, all the action this week happened either in Houston or it happened in Morrisville. You were in Houston. I was in Morrisville. You were doing the majority of the stuff of the work there on the broadcasts. And here we had Aman Patel, who he was going to join us tonight, but he actually got sucked into doing some umpiring for some youth cricket. So he's out there sweating, always working hard one way or the other. You know how that is.
I think the action in Houston and even seeing some of the action for you guys in Morrisville, the Super Overs, and I think the coverage was great all around. So credit to the MLC for sure.
Yeah. And, hopefully we see even more of this in the future. Like it's great to see this. I get kind of addicted to this league right now with all the great content that's coming out, with all the great streams that are coming out, the games. This season, I know we're only in the second season. We're in the second week of the season. So, of course, everything's going to look like it's upside down first 2 weeks. One team gets upset one time or 2 times, or a couple of teams get upset. It looks like the whole table's flipped upside down from last year. And in some ways it kind of is. But that opens the door for new teams to step in and shine. And we had one of those games that I was really excited about this last weekend. If we could take a snapshot just before that, there was a lot of excitement in my mind. And that was St. Louis versus Seattle, because St. Louis at the time, even though it was so early, it's still exciting to be in second place in that playoff picture. You're right there at that spot. You got a long way to go. But a team like St. Louis to have that at any point, when you have teams like Houston in your conference who are below you. And then we have Seattle, an up-and-coming team that made so many changes this offseason that really bolstered their triumvirate of superstars on that team. To have them coming head-to-head there, already having a really exciting game with 2 up-and-coming teams and up-and-coming communities clashing with each other. I was stoked about that.
Yeah, it was really a fantastic match. I think this Seattle team this year especially, I look at their bowling attack, obviously led by Captain Harmeet Singh, but they've added Akhilesh Bodogam, the off spinner who took 15 wickets last year. He, I think, has been a huge addition for them. Obviously, Van Skalvik is there, who will be sort of that leading wicket taker. And then I think they just have a perfect combination. I love the way that they've used Rohan Posanapalli, the youngster who's made the move from East Bay. I just think that Seattle, even though it's such a tough group with the Grizzlies, with the Strikers, they could really make some noise in that division. And obviously, it's only 2 teams to go through. But I think with Andreas Gauss at the top, the Crosswaith brothers. So that was a big win against St. Louis in sort of that cross-group rivalry. But I definitely think they could be a serious force to be reckoned with going forward in this tournament.
Yeah, last year, the team that I was most excited about that just barely missed the playoffs was Michigan. I thought they had such a really fun team to watch. They had different guys stepping up every game. They had a really a deep team too, and you need that. Of course, they just did miss out. I think, regardless of whether or not they make the playoffs this year, Seattle to me is kind of like last year's Michigan Stars was, in that they're gonna give everyone a really hard time. Even if I would not be shocked in the slightest bit if they make the playoffs. But that is such a tough division. We have not seen the best yet, I don't think, from that division. Obviously, Silicon Valley Strikers have not lost a single stride from last year, and that really makes it tough on the other teams. So last year, speaking of the Michigan Stars, last year Ryan Scott from the Michigan Stars scored the first century in the league. This year, Numan Anwar scores the first century in the league. So the Michigan Stars aren't going anywhere, it looks like to me.
Yeah, I think spot on. When you look at sort of the experience that they bring, obviously Noman Anwar comes from Pakistan, has played at a very high level over there. But also Zishan Masood. I mean, Oman's captain.
Oman,
a man that has scored the second most runs in the League Two, the Cricket World Cup, League Two, and who had just played in the US a month ago. I just think the construct of that batting lineup, Anwar is somebody that has been very, consistent in the tournament so far, 100, then followed up with a 40. Masood obviously is a quality player. The international numbers that he possesses, speak for themselves. So with those two, and then they have a Mohamed Mohsin who can come in and play a small cameo at the end, and also boy his leg spin. I think they could be a seriously dangerous team, especially in that division where you have a Houston Hurricanes team who finished second last year but are struggling a bit. You have Americans who are a bit hot and cold. So I think what I've seen so far, obviously Anwar getting 100, the way they were able to, they came up short against the strikers, but they were still able to challenge them. I think all in all, what I've seen from them has been pretty exciting. And I think definitely this could be the year where they take that next step and actually, go pretty far in the playoffs.
And they're looking strong, even as Ryan Scott has not yet really hit stride. One thing that's great to see is even though his average right now is only 18, he scored 72 total runs. His high score for his 4 innings is 30. Even that considered, his strike rate hasn't suffered. It's still 146.94. So you see the intents there. You see that the attitude has stayed the same. And that's very important. Yeah, they got a lot of guys hitting in about that range on strike rate. And like you said, Zishan Masood, it's tough to top that addition to a team.
Yeah, Masood, I think his all-round impact is going to be huge for that team this year.
Who else is exciting you in the Central Division?
I think when you look at that Central Division, obviously you have the Hurricanes. I think Matthew Trump, the young all-rounder, he's been a huge find. Came in at number 8 for the Hurricanes, and even though they've had a hot and cold start, 2 and 3, their big players haven't really fired. We haven't seen Ashley Nurse with the bat as yet. Just one player of the match with 4 wickets with the ball. But Trump, to me, could be sort of the defining player for the Hurricanes this year. And I say that because he's shown me over the last weekend that he can be very versatile. He comes in at number 5 a game, comes in at 8. He can be that finisher for them. What it allows is either Usman or Fiqh or Ashley Nurse to go into the top order. So a Houston team that's sort of trying to find their new remedy with a lot of holes to fill because they've lost Sushant Modani, they've lost Ali Khan, who's on international duty, Willem Luddick, and many others. So I think definitely Matthew Trump has been a huge pickup for them, the youngster from South Africa, with both his batting and his bowling. The ability to bowl inside a power play or even just outside, but with the keep up to the stumps, he's so hard to score off of, and I think he's been a huge find. In terms of in that Central division, well, I think obviously look at the Americans. Luke Schofield got 75. The way if he's able to start, they look like a completely different team. But definitely the batting lineup needs to come to the party a bit more. And all in all, I think so far it's been you have that many teams, all tied on 4 points. It tells you how close things are. Obviously, the Mustangs have separated themselves, and I think when you look at the team that the Mustangs have with Sujit Gowda and Corey Anderson, of course, then Ali Sheikh in terms of the youthfulness. I think they're a cut above the rest, and the other teams are going to have to do well to catch up to them. But in terms of the rest, besides the Mustangs, it becomes a close battle. So I'm interested to see how that plays out as the season goes on.
Yeah, surprisingly, Chicago Tigers, maybe surprisingly, are 2-2 right now. They lost to the Lashings and they lost to the Silicon Valley Strikers, so they're not doing too great against the West Coast teams. But they did beat the Surf Riders, and they beat the St. Louis Americans. So there's a question mark there about how they're going to fare against teams who are, in the upper crust, being that they lost the 2 teams that they did lose to. Our Western Division teams. We know how tough that division is. Obviously, the Central is pretty tough too. But the Central looks a little bit wide open at the moment because of Houston's struggles and because Lone Star, my goodness, 1-4 start after basically having the best record in the league last year in the regular season. That is a shocking thing, and it's not because they haven't had any close games. So you have to go all the way down to Chicago Blasters at number 7 before you get a team with a net run rate of -1. So there's a lot of teams there right around kind of the middle of the pack. shocking to see the Lone Star Athletics slip so far so quickly. At 1-4, you gotta think that's really going to be hard to climb into a playoff position from a 1-4 start.
Well, I think I definitely had the Athletics looking at their lineup and the construct of their team to be sort of challenging, up there, right there with the Mustangs, for those top two places. I think for them, it's probably going to be key to know that they haven't played terrible cricket. I mean, they've had a few close losses. Obviously, the top order's fired. Shayan Jahangir's got runs. Nitish Kumar's got starts. But
right,
I think it's too early to panic for any team. We're only 4 to 5 games in. It's a long season. And even though, yes, it will be an uphill battle from 1-4, still you have to believe that, you have the right team. You have the right players in position to really, get yourself up to that position. I think the bowling is probably letting them down a bit, conceding over 200 against the Michigan Cricket Stars in a crucial Central Division matchup. So they've got to now focus on winning those games against Houston, against Dallas. Obviously, when they play at the Musa Stadium, which is their home, they have to really try to continue to put runs on the board and then try to defend them. So it's early to panic, but definitely I've been really shocked, probably the most surprised by them to see how slow they've started in this minor league.
Yeah, me too. And it's not like you said, Shayan Jahangir, what a start he's had to the season. He's been absolutely fantastic. He hasn't had a bad innings yet in his 5 innings so far. And, I don't think he scored less than 40, to be honest. Nitish Kumar, like you said, he's gotten to some starts. Johnny Khan has come in and done his role, which is to be the clutch player at the end of the game with the bat when he needs to be. And he just did miss taking them over the line thanks to that amazing catch by Posanapalli the other night. In a game that, by the way, Posanapalli didn't bowl a ball that game. He was in the field, cold, and he came through and caught the ball at the most crucial time possible. So good for him. But as we were talking about Trump a minute ago, another player in the league who kind of reminds me of him in terms of the way that he bats and also the fact that he's a right arm, medium fast bowler would be Abraham Bolasetti over here in Morrisville. Morrisville came into the weekend with kind of a question mark around that number 6 spot. They knew they had Obus Panar who could carry them deep. They knew that they had Colin Archibald, who is a phenomenal player. But they needed another guy who could just give them a big injection of runs, and Abraham Bolasetti provided that. He scored 16 off 11 in the game where they went to the Super Over against Philadelphians, and they wouldn't have gotten that far without him. And then the very next day, when they actually had a good innings in the power play for once, he came through and scored 44 off of 22 in the late middle overs to boost them in a victory over a very strong Manhattan Yorkers team. So it's great to see these young players filling these roles that every team has to have them in T20 cricket. If you want to be a contender, you have to have somebody, you have to have that role. You have to have somebody who can give you an injection of runs at some point in the game. And so it's great to see him come through. It's great to see Trump come through. To me, they were the standout youth players for the weekend.
Yeah, I think Bolasetti and that overall Morrisville team, I think, is going to be obviously a big force. They have the advantage of knowing that the finals weekend is going to be at Church Street Park. So they will be obviously looking with Pinar, with Dane Pete, with Milanta to use that experience to try to get them in winning situations. They had a slow start, but I think the fact that they've held their nerve well in that Super Over encounter, and obviously Dane winning on the last ball, I've seen enough from them to know that they're going to be a tough team to beat. I think once Obus Pinar comes good, he's going to be very hard to stop. And as you said, they have the right complement of the youth talent around to make them, really tough in terms of going forward in this 2022 Toyota Minor League Cricket Championship.
Right. And then when you look at a disappointing team to me would be the New Jersey Somerset Cavaliers, who are 0-5, which is kind of shocking considering the talent they've got up and down that team. Obviously, they play in a very difficult division in the East. We know how tough that East division is. But they were playing in the South this week, and they played against some South teams, and they lost every game they played. Philadelphians went 2-2. That was a bit of a shocker. I think the most shocking thing was the way that they lost the game to the Raptors. But they defended 6 they defended 6 in a Super Over against the New Jersey Somerset Cavaliers, which is absolutely fantastic. The fact that they were in 2 consecutive Super Overs games, such a shocking rarity. And then they came through and they won the second one, defending 6 runs. That's That's absolutely fantastic. Liam Plunkett made his mark this weekend. It was great to see him in the league after all the hype. And what a guy. He's really bought into the league, if you ask me.
Yeah, I think Philadelphians, they'll be. I was pretty surprised. I thought they would have probably swept the first four, maybe only lost a maximum of one game. But I think also the manner in which they were defeated against the Lightning is also a big surprising thing to me. Blown away, to be honest. But I do think the Atlanta Lightning are a team that are showing you, with the all-round ability of a Shamar Springer, and some other match winners, Terrence Hines, Carey Pear, the overseas players that they've got. Then paired with, the locals that they brought in, a Sagar Patel who got a 50. I think they could be also a sleeper. The Atlanta Fire with Raheem Corwell and Jamar Hamilton, Cornet Dry, Ponzo. They're 4-1 and at the top of the table. So definitely, it's very early, Nate. Just 2 weekends. Very early to pick sort of who we think is going to be in the playoffs, because in the space of 2 or 3 games, all of a sudden the table looks completely different. So very early, but so far I like what I'm seeing in terms of the competitiveness of both conferences, and it really mends well going forward for an exciting season for the viewers at home.
Yes, and the season does already look very different than they did last year. The table looks different. The producers look different. The guys who are producing looks a little bit different. We are missing the American USA players who are down in Zimbabwe right now, and that's changing the landscape of the league up a little bit. But then again, you have Atlanta Fire missing 2 of their stars in Stephen Taylor and Aaron Jones, and they are currently sitting atop the South 4-1 with a net run rate of 1.7288, which is pretty good for having only played five games. They don't look like they're slowing down at all. Obviously, it really helps to have Cornwall in your batting order. That's quite the boost to have a guy who's consistently going to strike at 200 and, probably going to at least get you 30 runs doing that every game. So, they've still got the youth of Tinder Subramanian. They got Milo Alponzo, who's a fantastic all-round player. Cornet Dry, great leader, great bowler, can really, score quickly as well. So, this team looks very, very strong. You mentioned the Lightning. I think the Lightning looked amazing at times this weekend, and then they went ahead and lost a game, which was kind of shocking to me. The loss they had to the Manhattan Yorkers was pretty thorough, losing by I think 28 runs. And then Morrisville beating the Yorkers, who just beat the team the day before, looked like nobody could beat them. So it's great to have this competitive. It's great to have this a little bit more parity, I think, this season than last year. I think there's 3 really big teams in the South that can do it. You've got Sid Matani, who was fantastic this weekend for the Lightning. What amazing addition he was. I don't understand why San Diego didn't keep him around. They certainly could use him right now, I think. But he certainly made he certainly made teams pay for it playing in the South right now. So yeah, we've got more turf games this year, it seems like. That makes all the difference. And Church Street's already scoring well, which this point last year, Church Street was going at about 105 runs in the first innings. And now it's going, we had a 200 run innings this past weekend. So, I feel like we've got a really strong start to the league right now, to the season, and it's very exciting. How about this upcoming weekend? What are your plans this upcoming weekend?
Well, this upcoming week, obviously the premium stream moves to San Jose, where I think you have some mouth-watering clashes. You look at the East Bay Blazers up against the Grizzlies. Every game in that division, especially when you have 2 teams in the same group playing each other, is going to be so pivotal. When you come down to the standings, the Grizzlies are a team that I have, I'm very impressed by, with Isan Adil, Zia Shazad, Sami Aslam. But I think this is going to be a different challenge for them, the way Mark Dale has added sort of his experience to the East Bay Blazers. David White is fired once already, and then Sanjay Krishnamurthy as well. So definitely the Blazers and that tie is going to be very important. And then the Strikers have the Surf Riders on Saturday. I expect them to continue to win. And I mean, Shehan Jayasuriya, 200s consecutively. They're going to be extremely unstoppable, especially after the addition of Raymond Rifa, who just comes from playing West Indies Test cricket against Bangladesh, walks straight in and then able to score 47 and take 2 wickets and win player of the match. So definitely, I think this weekend you don't want to miss it on Willow TV and the MLC Network. You should get, some blockbuster action, some blockbuster ties.
Right. Yeah. San Diego coming up to the Bay Area, and the Bay Area teams, the rest of them all involved in making 4 teams there. Now, this division, we talked a lot last season about the Bay Area teams, being so dominant. Last year, the Blazers were the odd team out. This year, who do you think? Let's make a prediction. Who's the odd team out in the West Division? In the Bay Area?
It's tough. So you mean is Seattle included in that, or is just East Bay?
Let's throw Seattle in the mix. I think it's a 4-team race, if you ask me.
I do as well. I think what I've seen, I know some people have questions about the Grizzlies, but I just like the construct of their team. I think you look at the experience of Asami Aslam. Obviously, the addition of Isan Adil, I think possibly could help them, just separate themselves. So if I had to pick a top 4 from now, I would say definitely the Strikers. I expect them to be up top. Then I think the Grizzlies and the Thunderbolts, that could come down to even the last weekend. But I would just give the Grizzlies a slight edge. And then the Thunderbolts and the East Bay Blazers may just have to miss out. So far, I'm going with the Grizzlies just because I think I always back that international experience that they have. The way they've added Adil this year, I think he could be a real game changer for them, across the tournament. So I'm going to pick those 2, the same 2 that came out last year.
It's tough to pick anything else other than what you just did. I'm excited to see Seattle play on turf in Seattle in the future. And I think that might shape things up a little bit differently, more in their favor. You don't want to face any of those other Bay Area teams on AstroTurf in Seattle or anywhere on AstroTurf. You just don't want to do it. I think that'll bring home advantage in the favor of Seattle, and I can't wait to see that happen because it'll make things even more interesting. But Nikhil, that's about it. I think we talked a little bit about everything. There was too many games. We would be here for 3 hours talking if we wanted to cover everything. But I really thank you for joining me. I can't wait to watch your premium content this coming weekend. It's been a joy so far. When I'm not watching Morrisville games, I'm watching the premium content.
Fantastic, man. Appreciate having me and looking forward to seeing what the tournament can produce in terms of if it can top the 2 weekends, then we're in for a real treat. Thanks a lot for having me, Nate.